Hey, News Radio 600. Welcome to your weekend, San Diego Business Saturday. I'm Sully. Great to have you along today. Kogo.com, keyword Sully. And a big hello to you if this is the first time watching the show or listening to the show. Yes, I said watching the show. Even though you're driving around Southern California with the dial on AM 600. At the end of every show, you can go to Kogo.com, keyword Sully, and watch the TV version of the program. So it's great to have you along today. Christina Gustin, UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management is going to join us. Trey Wasser from Ely Gold Royalties, a gold expert, will be on the air with us today. But I'm very excited to feature Craig Dado, Chief Marketing Officer from the Mar Thoroughbred Club. I think you're going to be surprised on what's going on over there and what a big piece of economic impact the Mar Thoroughbred Club brings to the city of San Diego. San Diego Business Saturdays on the air. All right, so couple things to talk about, and I'm going to save the economic banter for Christina because there's plenty to speak of going forward here. A couple of issues. We're waiting for see what happens at the Fed Reserve's July 30 to 31st policy gathering in Jackson Hole, where Jerome Powell, Fed chairman, is going to give remarks about the monetary policy at this symposium. He's going to defend his rate cut last time. He's going to talk about what kind of rate cuts we're looking at going forward. And to see if there's actually recession fears. Like Monday, we had a fear of recession. Tuesday, we did not. By Thursday, recession fears had waned. Actually, Wednesday they waned because did you see the earnings for freaking Target and Walmart? Now, let me ask you something. If you are in doubt of this economy, and I know many people are, I know the narrative in the news is that the Trump economy is not as great as Donald Trump says. And look, I'm not going to be political here. I'm just going to say we are enjoying prosperity that we haven't seen in a long time. So my question would be this. If you're doubtful of the economy, let's break it apart in little pieces. 70% of our economy, anybody's economy, any country's economy is made of consumer spending. Now, if consumer spending drives economies, then you would think that when a retailer posts unbelievable earnings, that means that people are doing what at those retailers? What's the word I'm looking for? It rhymes with spending. So Walmart and Target came out and blew the lid off of any notion that we are not spending money in this country, meaning the economy is doing just fine. We're at maximum employment. We've got as low interest rates as you can. So one of the issues that I have with this, with almost everything that's going on here, is the fact that if you think you can put saving the world economy on the back of the Fed Reserve, who already, I would argue, has crazy low interest rates, this is what concerns me. Because to think that the problem is the central bank policy is not what's holding back the global economy. Fed fund rate right now, 2 to 2.25%. Europe has had ultra low, even negative interest rates for years. Cheap borrowing ain't the problem. The solution, of course, is consumer spending, and it seems as though that we have it. And I think that's what's interesting. Donald Trump's top economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, spoke about the rising odds of a recession and the trade war and sort of the whipsaw market we're seeing, and then you saw that there is no recession. I mean, I think everyone agrees that we're going to go into one. I think that's what always happens with economies that are going unfettered for 10 years. You're going to see a contraction. But the fact that we're in one already, I'm not buying it. Based upon what happened this week with retail spending, I'm not seeing it. Remember, we had the worst rout of the year with the S&P falling 3%, the Dow falling 3.3% just a week ago. And that was on a flash signal based upon an inverted yield curve. That was a technical indicator that scared the pants off of many international traders. Do we have U.S.-China trade tensions? Yeah, that's going to end. That's going to end like all other stories end. Do we have weakening global economic growth? Probably so. That's going to happen also. But we have so many tools. The Fed has so many tools in the shed that it has available to them, that I just sort of feel like if we're going to start panicking, let's panic about something salient. Let's panic about something like, if there really is, if Donald Trump doesn't give a pass to Apple and now Apple doesn't manufacture in the U.S. because it can't compete with Samsung, a Korean company. So anyway, I'm going to talk about that with Christine in just a second. But I also want to chat a little bit about what a payroll tax cut might look like. Now, I talked about this on News Radio 600 Kogo with Ted and LaDonna this week. I was on KUSI a couple of times, and I talked about this very subject. Look, economists inside the White House started at the beginning of the week saying, no payroll tax cuts, and then Donald Trump came out, I think, on Wednesday and said, we're talking about payroll tax cuts. Look, this isn't the first time this has happened. President Obama pushed this through in 2011. Despite concerns that a payroll tax cut would increase the federal deficit. And the theory was that the benefit would outweigh the cost. And really what it came down to is that, look at your Social Security and your Medicare taxes are known as the FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act, I think, are taken right out of your paycheck. Unlike Medicare, Social Security, they're subject to a wage cap. And that magic number, I think, for 2019 is about $133,000. If you earn $133,001, you're only going to pay Social Security on $133,000. That's how that works. In contrast, all wages are taxed under Medicare. So in 2011, those payroll taxes for federal purposes were cut by 2%. So instead of having a 6.2% Social Security tax, you had a 4.2% tax. And that cut, by the way, was reset back in 2013. But here's how it could work now. A similar payroll tax cut right now would save top wage earners about $2,700 a year. But most full-time and salaried workers would save in the neighborhood of about $908. That's roughly a week's salary. The median income of a family of four in this country is $51,500. In San Diego, it's slightly higher. It's like $53,500. But it's roughly $1,000 a week that you'd save. Not a bad deal. Is it going to change people's lives? No. Some people call that shoe money. Some people call that food money. Regardless, it's something. Would it spur the economy? Probably so, and I think that would be the purpose. He also Donald Trump also has a possible change to capital gains taxes that would give a lot of investors an additional tax cut. I want to talk to Christina Gustin about that specifically. Christina Gustin with UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. Christina, first of all, thanks for swinging by again this morning. I always appreciate you getting rid of your Little League duties for us on Saturday mornings here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Here's my question. Capital gains tax cut, would that be a boon in your opinion based upon your client base and what UBS thinks? Is that a necessary thing that we need in this country right now in your opinion? Or would that be a wonderful thing for you?
Well, it's interesting. I think it would do more for everyone's sentiment maybe than it would their bottom line. Listen, everyone hates paying taxes, but I think that it would certainly help people feel more comfortable spending. I think it's really interesting that it's coming up right now. It makes me think that perhaps this administration is a little concerned about maintaining consumer spending at the healthy level that we're seeing it right now. I'm not really sure why it's coming up.
I think it's. I'll tell you why I think it's coming up, and I'm just one voice, but I think it's coming up because he's got a re-election coming up. Donald Trump needs something to get reelected. I mean, he's got a field of 457,000 Democratic hopefuls coming against him. I think, with wage stagnation, with the potential of a recession coming, and the reason I say recession coming is we are top heavy. Let's face it. We've seen an unfettered market for a while. Even you guys have got to be scratching your head as to when. Things don't go up forever. And I realize because of the route we took a week ago that we're about where we were. Well, I think we're about 1.6% higher than we were at the beginning of the year, but that's not much. That's almost going sideways for all intents and purposes. So my personal opinion is probably they need something an arrow in their quiver to make Americans feel better. Although I think, aren't things going pretty well right now? Look, we got a low interest rate. You saw those Target and Walmart earnings, right?
Yeah, listen, our House View Weekly this week is titled Bond Markets Signal Lower for Longer, but Overstate Recession Risk. So certainly, like you said, the inversion of the 2- and 10-year yield curve gave people a big shock last week. But, another indicator, the 3-month and the 10-year yield curve has been inverted since the springtime. So I think that, this is not a major news flash that we're very late in the cycle. I think all of these indicators are confirmation of that. We're watching all of the, jobs numbers and all the leading indicators really, really closely right now. But to your point, maximum employment, hot consumer spending, we're cautious but not really worried right now.
And with respect to interest rate cuts and such, in your opinion, my patent sort of answer is going to be, no, I don't believe we need another interest rate cut right now. Unless, something goes maybe to calm the markets down, but overall, look at 2.25%. In your opinion, or is UBS's stance that, I guess we're always looking for an interest rate cut, but do we need economic stimulus right now? It seems like we're at maximum employment. We got low interest rates. You got people spending money. Why the talk of the stimulus, in your opinion?
Our expectation is for another 75 basis points of easing by the Fed over the next year or so.
Okay.
And our expectation of the 10-year, 12 months from now, 10-year Treasury rates are only going to be at 1.9%. So, if this last one was an insurance cut, I think some of this is their goal, is staving off recession and maintaining calm in the markets. So, I think now they're also playing a game of meeting people's expectations. And these traders that are trading on these offhanded remarks and comments in the press are playing a dangerous game, but our expectation is for more cutting.
Yeah, good stuff. Christina, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Christina Gustin, RKG Wealth Management, UBS Financial. Get a hold of her, would you? 619-557-4758. She does not sponsor this program. This is not a paid advertisement. I'm giving you her number because I trust her. How about that? A non-paid endorsement for my friend, Christina Gustin, with RKG Wealth Management and UBS. Hey, you've been thinking about gold lately because it's back in fashion. I'm going to have a gold expert on the air with you in just a second. It's San Diego Business Saturday, News Radio 600 Kogo. Hey, Southern California, News Radio 600 Kogo, San Diego to Santa Barbara, out to Yuma. San Diego Business Saturday is on the air. Great to have you along today. I'm Sully. Catch me every morning at News Radio 600 Kogo and San Diego Morning News with Ted and LaDonna. Also on KUSI a few mornings a week on the Good Morning San Diego broadcast. And, of course, with my partner of 23 years, Russ T. Nails, on the national television program The Big Biz Show. 110 million broadcast home strong. We're also in 150 radio stations, including iHeartRadio and American Forces Radio Network in 175 countries and all the ships at sea. You can find out more about that going to bigbizshow.com. And you can find more about this program by going to kogo.com, keyword Sully. Excited to have George Chamberlain join me next week, starting on a regular basis. George, of course, is the resident expert in business, and I learned a lot from him when I first got into radio 23 years ago. But I believe I've successfully talked him into joining the program on a regular basis, so we'll be hearing from George a lot. Okay, so first of all, thanks again to Christina Gustin from UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about a few things in San Diego before I get to Trey Wasser, who's a friend of mine. He's also the president and CEO of a company called Ely Gold Royalties. He's got 33 years of investment banking experience, venture capital experience, but he's also turned into somewhat of a gold expert. And what's interesting is it's not just the mining of gold, but it's also about gold royalties. But I think it's time to talk about gold for a number of reasons. Number one, gold was out of favor for many, many years. You heard the commercials everywhere, including on Big Biz Show, where gold's going to reach 5,000, and then suddenly gold was at 1,100. And about 6 weeks ago, we talked about gold on this program and sort of pontificated that we could be seeing $1,500, $1,600 an ounce gold, and sure enough, gold is at $1,512 right now. So we're going to talk to Trey about that in just a minute. In the meantime, though, San Diego County's jobless rate was up slightly, 3.6% last month. But panic not, many labor types are blaming the summer slowdown with respect to and education hiring as well. So California state rate average, by the way, is 4.4%. U.S. unemployment rate is a little under 4%. So we're still tracking lower as a city And of course, I know so many of you listen to me in LA and Santa Barbara. I believe the jobless rate in Los Angeles right now, 3.8%, Orange County, 3.7%. So jobless rate in our county in San Diego was also 3.6% last year, which is interesting. And our annual job growth in San Diego is running ahead of historical figures, which is why I question a rate cut. I question the need for quantitative easing, and I don't know, they haven't really brought that up, but I question the need for economic stimulus because, we added 30,000 jobs in the last 12 months in this town. And the most higher, by the way, teaching jobs and government jobs. I'm not sure I like the government jobs number, but long story short, as I mentioned in the first segment, look, we have this talk about, Monday we had a recession, Tuesday we didn't. At least there was fears about a recession. And I'm just thinking to myself, you've got maximum employment in this country. You have ultra low interest rates, 2 to 2.25%. You saw Walmart and Target's earnings go through the roof. And again, 70% of every economy, our economy is the gross domestic product, the GDP, all right? 70% of any country's economy is based on one thing, and that's consumer spending. Well, who spends money at Walmart and Target? Well, apparently middle-class America does. And middle-class America is participating in this economic boon, as evidenced by the numbers. Look at what Target and Walmart posted this week. Walmart stock went absolutely through the roof on Wednesday, as did Target. And the interesting part of it is, you can't argue with the numbers because these are retail companies. Do you realize that Target was up 20% in one day on Wednesday, was up $17 a share on Wednesday. Walmart trading at 112, didn't do as good as Target did, but still, you're talking about some really solid retail stuff happening here, and I'm excited to talk about it. Okay, listen, gold is an important part of any investor's asset allocation. Gold tends to perform well in times of economic turmoil. We have a ton of economic turmoil right now with respect to what's going on with the U.S. and China. Even though the fundamentals look solid for an economy, I think we're also facing a narrative in the press about maybe the economy isn't as good as one says it or one thinks it is, but it's pretty darn good. So there's a question. Why should we consider gold and when should we consider gold? Trey Wasser is president and CEO of Ely Gold Royalties. He's become a friend of mine, and I would like to think that we could rely on him on a regular basis. But Trey, welcome to the program. First of all, thanks so much. This audience has not heard you. He's been a regular guest on Big Biz Show. But talk to us a little bit about, gold's back in fashion, isn't it? You guys spent a couple of years as the person in the corner that couldn't get a dance date, huh?
Well, it's been a rough couple of years here in the gold market. But, if you look at it as the return on gold over the last 10-year period, it has still been a pretty solid investment. And if you go back 15 years or so, it's still very good. And while it's quietly now, just a few $100s from its all-time high, back to I'm looking at the print right now, Sully. It's at $1,502 an ounce on the spot market.
Now, the bottom line though is you guys haven't seen those numbers in quite a while, and that which brings me to the thought that, look, gold is a part of, or should be a part of every investor's portfolio, and I believe that look, if this were a stock, are we too late, or now is it the time to start thinking in terms of, we should really think in terms of maybe adding gold to our portfolio now, because look at with turmoil times like this, how gold performs, correct?
Well, that's right, and if you look at the technical chart of gold, it's been trading between $1,150 to $1,350 for about five and a half years. So it's set up a pretty good base here, and just recently broke out of that. I may see some consolidation, but in that gold space, it looks like it's got a pretty good base under it to move significantly higher. And with the turmoil that you mentioned, and you just could go down the list, Sully. you've got the China thing, of course, and the problems in Hong Kong. People just trying to get their money out of Hong Kong any way they can these days. And of course, buying gold is one way to do that when you're trying to, get out of a weaker currency. The Russians have been big buyers at the central bank level of gold, continue to buy it. Other problems, we don't even speak about the problem in Argentina, but that's quietly, kind of coming apart down there. So a lot of buyers of gold here and a lot of reasons to be adding gold to the portfolio. The big question, becomes then, okay, how do I do it? Because probably a lot of your listeners have never really bought gold before. Well,
and that's true. And talking about that a little bit. So when someone has not been in the gold market and they've been in the equities market and they're moving into that, what advice do you have for them? Is there a best practices towards that process, or do you just go and buy a gold exchange traded fund and roll the dice there?
Well, I personally, as opposed to an exchange-traded fund, which really gives you no advantages over the physical gold, I prefer to own the physical gold. One thing I've been buying recently is, on the physical metal side, is the old early 1900s Liberty $20 gold pieces, which historically have traded as high in 25 to 30% premium above gold. But over the last few years, the central banks worldwide have been selling their stashes of those coins and turning it into bullion and just making up taking the premium.
And the advantage of that
down to where there's almost no premium in those coins now.
And the advantage to that is what, Trey? Melting gold down to bullion and so on and so forth. What's the thought process behind that?
Well, no, they didn't melt it down. The coins were trading at about a 25% premium over gold because of their numismatic value. So what they did is sold their coins and turned around and bought 125% more of gold, right?
Got it.
Because
sure.
They sold for a 25% premium and were able to turn it into bullion at of course no premium.
So from where I'm sitting, I sort of feel like when we're looking at a market here, listen, we have a volatile stock market right now. I mean, we as I said before, we had the biggest rout of the year, literally a week ago, where we lost 3% in the S&P and 3.3% in the Dow and the Nasdaq, and we came back at a relief rally at the end of last week and the beginning of this week. But let's face it, we've gone sideways basically this year. Last year we went sideways because it was an election year. We're going to go sideways next year because of election year. And I realize we're going up slightly, but we're not. I mean, we're seeing these big gains and then we don't see any gains at all. So this type of volatility plays well, right, for gold?
Absolutely. I mean, it's especially the down markets, when you're seeing volatility on the downside, people are going out and they're looking for places to put their money, a safe haven, if you will. And of course, at today's low interest rates, and in Europe at negative interest rates, people are also using gold again because, of course, gold doesn't pay a dividend or interest. Has a bit of storage cost depending on how you own it physically for central banks.
But either way, it needs to be a part of a balanced portfolio, 100%. Trey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Short and sweet today. Trey Wasser, President and CEO of Ely Gold Royalties. That's ELY. You can go to elygoldinc.com for more information on Trey and his company. Coming up, everything you want to know about the Mar Thoroughbred Club and what a great economic impact it has on San Diego. News Radio 600 Kogo. News Radio 600 Kogo. Welcome to your weekend. It's San Diego Business Saturday. I'm Sully. Great to have you along today. Catch me every morning on the San Diego Morning News right here with Ted and LaDonna on News Radio 600 Kogo and over at KUSI on Good Morning San Diego. Let's not forget the nationally syndicated In 110 million TV homes every day, Big Biz Show with my good friend Russ T. Nails. We're also on radio. We're multi-format on that show. We're TV and radio. 150 radio stations in 175 countries, as well as national TV. You can go to bigbizshow.com and figure that out. But great to have you along. San Diego Business Saturdays on the air. Okay, so you hear me beat the drum in this town for 20 some odd years on the airwaves here at News Radio 600 Kogo and over at KUSI about a number of events in San Diego. And one of the reasons why I beat the drum so hard for the San Diego Chargers had nothing to do with football. What it had to do with was for 12 Sundays a year and roughly 9 of them in San Diego, we saw these sweeping views of the Coronado Bay Bridge and these panoramic shots of Torrey Pines. And what I'm talking about is when Chargers were playing on television, which was basically a 3-hour commercial for San Diego. And I couldn't care less. I mean, of course, I was a Charger fan. I was born and raised here. But it was not about Chargers winning. It was about the fact that we compete for tourism dollars as a city with a lot of other cities in this world. I think our budget, and you heard Joe Terzi on this very program a few weeks back, I think our budget's close to $25 million that they're spending in advertising to compete with tourism dollars. Tourism is our number 2 economic driver in this city. And what do we have to drive tourism? And let me tell you why it's so important. TOT tax, sales tax, direct spending, all trickles down to our local economy, and TOT tax in particular because it's a component of the general fund. General fund is made of sales tax, property tax, and heads and beds tax. That's when people come to our city, pay us for the privilege of sleeping in one of our hotels. So that's why Comic-Con is so important. That's why I would argue that the Chargers were so important to San Diego, because when some Johnny Lunchbucket was sitting in negative 16 weather in Green Bay while his Green Bay Packers were playing the Chargers in 70-degree weather in November, there was a few families going to come visit San Diego that next spring, or even that winter. So right now, we really have the big 3 here in San Diego, and you've heard me talk about it. Comic-Con being one of them, KAABOO, the music festival being one of them, because the economic impact at KAABOO and tourism is outstanding. But then there's also the Mar Thoroughbred Club. And if you think in terms, on the sunny afternoon of July 3rd, 1937, the original laid-back Californian himself, Bing Crosby, stood at the turnstile collecting tickets for his new seaside racetrack in Del Mar. And that first day, more than 15,000 came for a look, and word got around fast because more than 18,000 were there the second day. And I will tell you, since its inception, in 1970, the Mar Thoroughbred Club has paid over $1 billion to the state in charities and municipalities. $500 million to the state of California, $450 million to the Del Mar Fairgrounds. So long story short, and by the way, track employment during the summer race meet, I think, is over 6,000. We're about to talk to Craig Dado, Chief Marketing Officer, to talk about that. And they've got an annual payroll of over $20 million. I'm telling you right now, this is something that we need every single year. We can't get rid of. And even a University of San Diego business economics study put Del Mar's economic impact in San Diego County at $180 million to $220 million in direct spending every year. So I can tell you right now, I am here today to talk about 2 things. I'm here to talk about the fact that this is one of the most important components to our economic well-being in San Diego. And number 2, to dispel the myths of what's going on with what's going on with horse racing in San Diego. Here to talk about that, along with some of the upcoming events that we're going to get to, is a man who I consider a friend, a guy I respect a lot, and a guy who's done a fantastic job up there. Craig Dado is the Chief Marketing Officer of the Mar Thoroughbred Club. Greg, thanks so much for taking the time out today, pal.
Well, thanks for having me, Sully. I appreciate it.
So I'm spouting all these numbers out, and I think people, sort of, a 10-1 meet even on a Sunday afternoon, which I would argue maybe it's not your busiest day, or maybe a Wednesday afternoon it's not your busiest day, but the place is teeming with economic impact. And I think people sort of are missing that because of the narrative that's going on with horse racing. And you and I talked earlier today, and I found this to be really interesting, and it's a great trick question. But Craig, I'm just going to go right for it. How many horses have we lost in afternoon meets at Del Mar Thoroughbred Club this year?
During the races this year, we have lost a grand total of 0.
Yeah, see, and I think that most people would turn their heads at that, wouldn't they? Because I think the narrative is that you've lost several and you haven't lost any. So
right.
I want you to address that first, because I think that's the 400-pound gorilla in the room. I think we need to dispel this notion.
So coming out of our 2016 meet, we made a number of changes. We realized that if we continue to lose horses at the rate by which we're seeing it across the country, I'm not so sure horse racing is going to make it. So we stepped up and made a number of changes here at Del Mar. One of the things we did is we pushed back opening day a week after the end of the fair. That cost us about $1 million in revenue, but we knew we needed to do it. I'm going to point out something here might not realize is that we're essentially non-for-profit. So we can make decisions like that are in the best interest of horse racing. Every dime we make, you mentioned it earlier, we give to the Fairgrounds in the form of a rent payment. So Del Mar Thoroughbred Club is essentially non-for-profit. We also invested $12 million with the help of the Fairgrounds in state-of-the-art surfaces and facilities. We enhanced our pre-race vet inspections. Horses now get seen by a vet, examined by a vet 4 times before they get in the starting gate on a race day. And we reduced the horse population by about 15%, down to about 1,850 horses. But more important than that, I think the culture has changed with the trainers and the owners. And if there's a horse that might be a little ouchy, we're not running that horse anymore. Trainers just aren't doing it. So happy to say that those changes that we put into place for 2017 and 2018 led to a 70% reduction in catastrophic injuries, and they made Del Mar officially, from a statistics standpoint, the safest track in the country.
So you guys are your own. I mean, you guys are the best monitor of what goes on at that racetrack with respect to those horses. And if you have an overzealous owner or an overzealous trainer that just wants to have a horse out there, you guys also have a checks and balances system. I think people need to understand that. Where you're, as you just mentioned, if you've got a touchy horse, you're not going to let him run. And I think it's important for people to hear that, because I think people see this place as a place that makes all this kind of money. But I think, hey, it's a not-for-profit. Number two, you're looking out for the best interest of the animals, because what's good for the animals is good for you guys.
Absolutely. And if you talk about animal activists, I mean, aren't we the biggest animal activists of all? I mean, that's our livelihood. We live to make these horses happy and healthy. And because you're right, if we lose horses, we're out of business. And so far for 2019, we did some other changes. We added vets to the morning workouts. We'd never done that before. We put vets around the track to watch morning workouts when there could be as many as 1,500 horses working out every morning. And if they see a horse on the track they don't like, they get on the radio and get that horse off the track. We've also increased our out-of-competition testing this year. And the fact that we so far have no injuries in the afternoons is really tantamount to the fact that maybe we can reduce these numbers, and maybe we can get this as close to 0 as possible, something that we never thought was achievable, but maybe that is achievable.
Well, I think the other thing, too, is in doing some research on this, when you think about horse deaths in meetings across the country, it seems because of the press that these horse deaths have actually increased. And that's not actually accurate. It's actually sort of been static for several years now. It just seems like they're being reported more. And I think that's part of the narrative that we have to dispel. Number one, Del Mar Thoroughbred Club hasn't lost a single horse during an afternoon meet this year. 0 deaths. And number two, horse deaths aren't going up. They're just the reporting of horse deaths are going up. And I think, society changes and obviously, activists change and such like that. So what do you think, what would you like to tell the public, Craig? And by the way, Craig Dado is our guest. He's the Chief Marketing Officer at Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. And we're going to talk about economic impact. We're going to talk about some of the events. But what is the one thing you want folks to know that maybe haven't been there, that need to know to get a clear, fair, to borrow another network, balanced picture of what's going on there?
Well, unfortunately, our meet came on the heels of a really unfortunate season that Santa Anita suffered up in L.A., and the press on that was worldwide, if you will. So a lot of people lumped us in with Santa Anita. So my message would be, we're not Santa Anita. In fact, we're the safest track in the country, and we're breaking our own records this year, the safest track we've ever had at Del Mar. So, again, I can't sit here and promise we're never going to have an accident, but we are doing everything we possibly can to reduce that number and get it as close to zero as possible.
Let me just give you some. If you're listening here and you haven't heard some of these numbers before, and again, Craig Dado joins us here from the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club as Chief Marketing Officer, and we're going to spend time on the business end of this in a minute. But I wanted to get this out of the way. Every year, on average, Santa Anita Park loses 50 horses a year, and this year is nothing new. In fact, I think it's 41 horses this year were lost at Los Alamitos, 30 horses at Golden Gate Fields, 41 at Santa Anita. Do you know how many horses died in Del Mar Thoroughbred Club? I think total over the last several years, 12. You guys aren't even close to those numbers, and I think that's what San Diego needs to know and what Southern California needs to know. And I think part of changing that narrative is just to get people out there. Craig, stay right there for a second. I'm going to let you address that in just 1 second. And I also want to talk about some of the stuff we have coming up here at the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club because, again, for me, this is about economic impact. And for me, it's about what this does for the city. And of course, if we were hurting animals for a living, I wouldn't be any part of it. But this is not what's happening, and I think it's time to change the narrative. And as long as I've got a platform to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it and let Craig talk about it as well. Craig Dado, Chief Marketing Officer, Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. I'm Sully. It's San Diego Business Saturday. You can catch the TV version of this show just by going to kogo.com, keyword Sully, right after the show's over today. More from Craig Dado coming up.
Oh, wow. Wait a second, man.
News Radio 600 Kogo, San Diego Business Saturday is on the air. Great to have you along today. I'm Sully. Catch me every morning in San Diego Morning News, as well as over on KUSI on Good Morning San Diego. And the Big Biz Show with Rusty Nails at bigbizshow.com. So let's talk a little bit more about the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. Again, one thing I bet you learned today that you didn't know is that Del Mar Thoroughbred Club is a not-for-profit. I can tell you in terms of money, $75 million to equine research and breeding from the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. Track employment during the summer race meet exceeds 6,000 people. Annual track payroll, 20 to 25 million. That's just what I can find online. And of course, since its inception, the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club has paid over $1 billion to the state, its agencies, municipalities, and various charities. And this is something that San Diego needs. I think you need to think twice about the narrative that is being pushed out about horse racing in general and understand that this is indeed the safest racetrack in the country. And it's something that we desperately need in San Diego. And I think I was spouting off, Craig, a couple of numbers, and Craig Dado joins us as the Chief Marketing Officer of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. I was spouting off some numbers before we went to the break, and I want to give you a chance to address that because I think we really do need to change the narrative because the obvious is, horses die every time. This just doesn't happen. And let me repeat this if you're just joining us. Craig, I'm going to let you say this one more time. How many horses have we lost this year in afternoon meets at Del Mar Thoroughbred Club?
During afternoon races, we've lost 0.
None. The few horses that have had incidents and accidents have happened during training, and you guys can only control part of that. You can do a good job of keeping people from racing and keeping an eye out, but there's only so much you can do when you've got owners and trainers, correct?
Correct.
So,
well, we do have the vets inspect the horses before each race. So if there's a horse has a problem, we're gonna find it, or at least we hope so. That's the goal.
It's funny on the Big Biz Show, which is our national TV show and national radio show. We've interviewed track managers and marketing officers from the folks across the country in Kentucky. And listen, horse racing isn't a big piece of the program, but when you start talking about fractional horse ownership as an investment vehicle, we've had it on the air a number of times. And everyone to the man, Craig, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but everybody across this country to the man will say that the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club is one of the safest places and is probably right there as far as opening day at Del Mar with the Kentucky Derby. And I know you've heard that before. So let's talk about opening day this year. We were there, Russ and I were there shooting some stuff with you. As a matter of fact, we just showed a picture of the three of us on the camera screen here. But boy, you guys had another great year this year, didn't you, for San Diego as far as direct spending goes?
It was a very solid year. We had over 31,000 people attend. The total handle that day was just under 15 million.
Wow.
It was a very solid day. And, again, coming on the heels of Santa Anita and the unfortunate meet they had, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know whether anybody would show up. But San Diego came out and represented, and it was a great day.
Hey, for people that haven't gone out there, now I live obviously in the area and I can see what's going on there, but you guys have concerts there. You've had some, you had some big names there coming this year. So on Fridays, you guys have big name music there, correct?
Fridays and 4 Saturdays, yeah. So we had a 11 night music festival.
And you do that after the races and so on and so forth. Talk about what's coming up this weekend, because I know we have a big event coming up today.
Today, the Country Beer Jam. We're excited for that. That's today. We have over 100 craft beers that'll be out there, including St. Archer's new brew they brewed just for us in this event called the Western Swing Lager. We got a couple of great local bands. Kimmy Butler and Nan Caro are going to be performing. We got barbecue out there, and it's all free to enter with just track admission of $6.
Did I hear that Cowboy Mouth is playing there?
Cowboy Mouth is playing at the Taste of New Orleans, which is a week from Sunday on the 1st of September.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I will tell you, I know that News Radio 600 Kogo, we've been giving tickets away to that in the morning show. But I will tell you, if there's ever a band that's a good time, and I'm partial to one band in San Diego, but I will tell you, if there's ever a band that is a great time, it's Cowboy Mouth. What else do you have? No, the season runs for another what, week and a half now, up to Labor Day?
2 weeks, week and a half from now. We end on Labor Day Monday, which is the 2nd of September, and that's we're having a great military event that night after the races in the paddock. All the proceeds for that event are going to go to military charities. It's called Del Mar Salute, and we'll have a lot of active service and veterans there for that. And we have a great band playing that night, a band that always sells out the belly up. You've probably seen them, called the Wayward Sons.
Oh, sure, yeah, exactly. And I think what people need to understand, Craig, you handle all the booking for the talent there. So when people see, and when I see traffic up the 5 freeway and down the 5 freeway towards the end of a race, people are coming to see it. You handle all that stuff, right?
Well, we work with the Belly Up, actually, very closely. They book most of the shows, but we have input, and it's a lot of fun.
Talk about some of the featured events that you've had this year that you'll have again next year, because I've seen a ton of great things, not just concert lineups, but some of the stuff that people can get involved with just by going to the races.
Well, we had a great wine festival on the second week of the meet that drew over almost 3,000 people came for that. We had a taco festival. We had a barbecue festival. So we got a lot of food events. And then, like you said, we have great music. We've added a couple of country bands this year. We had Chase Rice and Midland. We always have a lot of reggae with Ziggy Marley and Iration. And we're closing it out with a big show next Saturday with the local band you probably know, the little offshoot of Blink-182 called Angels and Airwaves.
Yeah.
They're a big band, so
right.
we're gonna close with a bang here.
Right out of San Diego. By the way, I want to bring up a couple of things too. You have family weekends every Saturday and Sunday where you can take the kids to the infield, right?
Sure, absolutely, every Saturday and Sunday.
And then also you've got a thing called Daybreak in Del Mar. So as I'm leaving to go to Kogo every morning, I can tell you the lights are on over there. And people are out there having breakfast and watching morning workouts on the weekends, right?
Absolutely, 7 to 9 on every Saturday and Sunday in our clubhouse restaurant there. That's free for everybody, and order a little breakfast and watch the horses work out. It's a nice way to spend the morning.
Okay, so today we have the Country Beer Jam for all beer aficionados and more up at the racetrack, and then next I think it's Sunday you got the Taste of New Orleans. During the Labor Day weekend, correct?
With Cowboy Mouth and all kinds of Cajun food, drink, music. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you want to buy tickets or get details, go to delmarracing.com.
Hey, Craig, before I let you out of here, talk about the military salute, because you do a military salute every year, and this year it's on Labor Day.
This one's special.
Okay,
this one's going to be a big
about
party after the races, which is a lot of fun after the last race. And Tickets are $50 to get in, but for every ticket you buy, we invite an active duty military for free. So it's a 2-for-1 there, and there's going to be great music, great food, and like I said, as far as the music, it's the Wayward Son, so we expect a packed house and a great military crowd.
Okay, and I couldn't let you out of here without talking about two things. Very quickly, the Bing Crosby season, but after that, let's spend a little bit of time in the Breeders' Cup, because that's Friday, November 5th and 6th. So talk about the Bing Crosby season. You guys came up with that, about 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago. And it was basically a reaction to when Hollywood Park closed. We needed to fill in some dates for our Southern California circuit. But by doing so, running in the month of November, it allowed us to host a Breeders' Cup. So we hosted our first Breeders' Cup in 2017, and we're going to do it again in 2021. How important is that Breeders' Cup? Because when I look at economic impact, that equals about a half of a whole season, doesn't it, that one day? Well, even more so. I mean, the economic impact for Breeders' Cup in 2017 was $97 million. I tell you what, and the reason for that is that 75% of the attendees were from outside of Southern California. So people came from all over the world, and they came to spend money. If you're going to come out here and watch your $1 Million Horse run, you're probably going to park your plane at Palomar, and you're going to stay in a fancy hotel, and you're going to eat fancy food at restaurants every night, and they did exactly that. And the other thing that happened, Sully, was interesting. They didn't just come in for the 2 days. They knew they were coming to Del Mar and San Diego, so they came for 4 or 5 days and spent a lot more money, and that's why our impact numbers were so high. You got to love that. Craig, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, man. I know you're really busy, especially today with the events going on, and once again for being so generous with Rusty and I. We come out there and we bug you on opening day every year, but once again, thanks for what you're doing for the community, and thanks for getting the real narrative out on what's going on at Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. I really appreciate you having me on. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Craig Dado, Chief Marketing Officer at the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. Go out there today. It's a super fun event, and I know that there's a chance that you will see me and Rusty Nails. In fact, you'll see us there somewhere if you want to go out there. Country Beer Jam today, so check that out. And then, of course, next week on Sunday is the Taste of New Orleans. Food, drink, music in Del Mar, and it's when the South meets the West. So once again, thanks for Craig for coming on. Before we get out of here, just let me just spend 1 minute talking about a couple of things that we discussed this week on the morning news, and I want to bring up not only the fact that yes, we're in the middle of really a volatile stock season here, but but look, all of the economic indicators are there, but we've got again. Ridiculously low unemployment. We have interest rates that are 2 to 2.25%. And again, look no further than the numbers. Look what Target did this week on Wednesday. Target was up 20% based upon what? One thing: consumer spending. Qualcomm has inked a new patent licensing deal with the South Korean electronics giant LG, and that was a 5-year spat that was going on, and they then, speaking of 5 years, they did a 5-year license covering 3G, 4G, 5G smartphones and other devices, and they were just what Qualcomm seems to do, just like they did with Apple. They were at the doorstep of the courthouse, getting ready to go into a court battle, and sure enough, they got the deal done. So LG's previous license patent expired a couple years ago. Well, these two companies got together. They put it together, and now Qualcomm's got another dispute under its belt. So I'm going to spend some time talking about Qualcomm in the near future, and we'll kind of highlight on when the right time maybe to take a look at that stock. All right, there you go. Thanks, Christina Gustin from UBS Financial, RKG Wealth Management, Trey Wasser from Ely Gold Royalties, and of course Craig Dado, Chief Marketing Officer of the Del Mar Thoroughbred Club. Thanks for being so generous with your time, guys. My name is Sully. Catch me every morning on San Diego's Morning News on News Radio 600 Kogo. Also over at Good Morning San Diego at KUSI. And, of course, The Big Biz Show with Rusty Nails at bigbizshow.com. Catch me everywhere online at Sully Speaks, and maybe go check out sullyband.com. News Radio 600 Kogo.